everybody, Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I'm here with the Season 5 Week 1 battle of the NPL. This week against Trev's Atlanta Braviarys, the two-time defending champion of the NPL is who I get to face in my first week this season. So, how exciting, right? But if you happen to miss the conclusion to last season, you should know that I did advance to the finals last season, and in that battle, I played to the point where I had a 98% chance, approximately, of winning that game, and still managed to lose that game based upon RNG. So that was against Trev, of course, and I'm looking for some revenge after that wonderful battle that occurred a few months ago this week. So that is obviously my goal in this game, to get that revenge, start the season off the right way, and take our Toronto Raptors one step closer to our goal of a Season 6 championship. But it starts with this game, and let's go ahead and dive on into it. So his team this season consists of Manaphy, Megaladios, Terrakion, Entei, Porygon 2, Aromatisse, Gourgeist, Sharpedo, Electabuzz, Fletchender, and Excadrill. So he's got a very interesting team. I will point out, for those of you that aren't already aware, the NPL this season is using a point system as opposed to the open draft, so our drafts are going to be a little less powerful, most likely, at least in most cases, compared to what we had last year, but they are still pretty strong in that our system is more or less based upon the PPL point system with a few alterations, but our cap is a little bit higher as well, so our teams are going to be a little bit stronger for that reason. But even so, Trev has a pretty potent team, and you can see my team here displayed right next to his, with Victini, Sylveon, Mega Venusaur, Empoleon, Salamence, Cloyster, Ditto, Azelf, Piloswine, Nosepass, and Lucario. So my team's also pretty good too, if I do say so myself. But looking at the matchup, he has some threats, to say the least. He has Manaphy, which most people would not argue is one of the most powerful Pokemon in the format. Probably top 5 offensive Pokemon, maybe even the best offensive Pokemon in the format. It's debatable, but even so, it's a very difficult Pokemon to prep for on my end, especially because I don't have the luxury of an Underwear Clefable like I have had the past 2 seasons in prepping for something like a Manaphy. So yeah, Manaphy is a pretty big threat, to say the least, but also Megaladios and Terrakion both can pack quite the punch against my team. Megaladios, just due to the fact that it's such a great switch into Mega Venusaur, to the point where it makes Mega Venusaur's job a little bit more difficult, in that if it weren't for Megaladios, Mega Venusaur would be 100% fantastic in the matchup, but because Megaladios is there, Mega Venusaur has a little bit harder time finding traction, and will therefore not really be a wall that I have to rely on for this game, but it still definitely has utility in helping me against other threats on his team. So onto Terrakion. Terrakion is, in my opinion, the biggest threat to my team, just because its dual coverage of fighting and rock, or dual stab of fighting rock, hits my entire team very, very hard for, at the worst, neutral damage. And honestly, even my physical walls do not want to be taking Life Orb or Choice Banded hits from a Terrakion. So it's a threat, to say the least, and I'm going to have to make sure that I have the appropriate prep to make sure it does not get out of hand and blow through my entire team. But other things that I notice about his roster is that he only has 2 potential hazard setters, those being Terrakion and Excadrill. And I do kind of expect him to bring both. I think it's more likely that his hazard setter will be the Excadrill, just because it has such a nice time switching in against things like my Sylveon and Mega Venusaur, really without any fear of anything I can do to it outside of a hidden power fire. So I do believe Excadrill will come. Excadrill will be his stealth rocker. I don't know if it'll be offensive or especially defensive. Both are pretty decent options against my team. Especially defensive Excadrill switches in on Sylveon all day long and sets up rocks for free, and offensive Excadrill with maybe a Life Orb or I don't know, even Scarf Rocks. That's not a bad option against my team. He's going to need some sort of Scarfer to make sure he can outpace Scarf Victini, as if I were to bring Victini this week, I do think Choice Scarf is the best set, just to make sure I can outspeed things like his Manaphy, things like his Megaladios and Terrakion, etc. So those are just some initial thoughts. Fletchender is also something I need to keep an eye on in my prep this week, just because my team is overall pretty weak to priority bird spam, and I'm really fortunate not to have to face Talonflame this season, but Fletchender is a threat. So I do need to make sure it does not get out of hand. I'm hoping that my Ditto the potential to bring a Ditto will be enough to deter him from even bringing Fletchender, and if he does, maybe it won't be a setup variety, but then again, there's no reason to bring Fletchender if it's not going to have Swords Dance or Bulk Up, so I'm going to have to keep that in check as well. But that's about all there is to say as for the initial team analysis. Let's hop on over to the team builder, and as you can see, I brought a pretty nice squad this week, starting off with this Sylveon, this season named Reverberate, and this set is more or less a defensive pivot. It's going to be my best answer to Mega Latios, as Mega Latios otherwise is very, very good against my team. I do have Empoleon, which generally is a decent answer to Mega Latios, but it doesn't have recovery outside of rest, and I guess leftovers if I were to run that, but I do think I need Sylveon to be able to fulfill that role of handling Mega Latios at all costs. Now, it is worth noting that a physically offensive Mega Latios would give Sylveon a lot of trouble. The good news, though, is that he has to run a bulky Mega Latios to have any shot of just walling Victini. He could run something like a bulky Entei to try to handle Victini, but I think if he brings Entei, it's going to be Choice Banded, just so that he can dish out a lot of damage to my entire team, as nothing really wants to switch in on Banded Sacred Fires outside of a physically defensive Victini or a physically defensive Salamence, and both of those are weak to Choice Banded Stone Edge. So I do think if he brings Entei, it's going to be Choice Banded. So yeah, Sylveon overall very, very solid in the matchup in my opinion, but primary role is to handle Mega Latios, and physically offensive Mega Latios will put in a lot of work against my team. Probably even with the Sylveon set, I just don't think he can afford to bring it. He has to run a bulky set, and with that in mind, I should be able to handle it pretty well. The investment here, it's basically max HP with an odd HP stat for level 50, as well as enough special attack to ensure that I have a chance to Oko a Mega Latios, like a max HP bulky Mega Latios after Stealth Rocks. It's a very small chance, but it is a chance. I would like to have some sort of chip damage on it before I go for the Hyper Voice if I'm going for the kill, but as you can see later, I actually have some other plans for the Mega Latios as well, so it'll help Sylveon achieve that goal. And then basically I just threw a bunch of EVs into defense and just a little bit in SPDF and speed. No real reasoning behind the exact numbers on those, outside of the fact that I want to enhance my bulk and be able to take hits from the likes of Fletchender. These EVs do allow me to always survive a +2 acrobatics from a Fletchender, so that's pretty nice. And the just 4 in speed allows me to help with speed creeps and etc. So that is the Sylveon. Next up is the return of Groot, the Mega Venusaur, and this set is pretty straightforward. Max HP, max defense with a little bit in SPDF, fully defensive, bold nature. Leaf Storm allows me to almost always Oko a standard Manaphy, so that's a pretty big deal. If he brings Manaphy, I'm expecting to be a Wakan Berry to handle the potential Scarf Victini, because Victini otherwise puts a lot of pressure on his Mega Latios, especially if I'm continually clicking U-turn, as that would definitely achieve a lot of momentum for me. So I'm expecting him, if he's going to bring Manaphy, to be a Wakan Berry to help deal with the Victini. Therefore, this set should 100% guarantee that Manaphy cannot set up on Mega Venusaur, and as long as my team prevents Manaphy from setting up on anything, then I'm in pretty good shape. But even if it does set up, I have a response to that, which I'll get to here soon. But Sludge Bomb is there to hit the Mega Latios and Entei, and Leaf Storm hits essentially everything else, I believe. Sludge Bomb also hits the potential Gourgeist. Leech Seed is there just to keep the pressure on him and keep the recovery going for my team, as this is bulky offense team. It wants the Leech Seed recovery coming in at all costs, if possible, of course. And finally, Synthesis to round out the set. Next up is Salamence. Cyclone is the nickname this season, and this is a very nice set for the matchup, to say the least. The speed investment here allows me to outspeed all forms of Excadrill that are not Choice Scarfed, and due to that, it will also outspeed an Adamant Entei, and in order for Entei to run Extreme Speed, it has to be Adamant, and he's bringing Extreme Speed if he has Entei, so it's going to be Adamant, and I will therefore outpace that. Now, the only downside with this set is that I will not be able to hit Excadrill very hard, especially if it's specially defensive, but if it's specially defensive, it's not going to hit anything that hard either, most likely, so that's the plus side there. But otherwise, this is my primary switch into Excadrill despite that, because I do more or less expect an offensive Excadrill this week. I don't think he needs a specially defensive one. He probably could get away with an offensive one with leftovers if he really wants a good switch into Sylveon, something like that. But more or less, this is just going to be my defogger, dedicated switch into Entei, and dedicated switch into Excadrill. and if I'm predicting close combat from Terrakion, this might be a switch into that, although that's very risky, as you know. But I do have Mega Venusaur and others, and Sylveon even to switch into Terrakion if I need to. So that is the Salamence set. I did pour most of the extra investment into defense, just so I can best tank physical hits. His team is very physically oriented in terms of its offenses, so I'm going to try to take advantage of that this week. And obviously Salamence is not going to be needed to take hits from the likes of Manaphy and what's his other special attacker? Megalodios, I guess, is the other main one worth noting, and it's not going to take hits from either of those, so definitely this was the proper EV spread here. And then next up is the Empoleon. This set is more of a lure for the Terrakion. Okay, it serves a few purposes. One being a lure for the Terrakion, as I really would like to get Terrakion out of the way as early as possible, and perhaps if he wants to lead Terrakion, this is going to be my lead for sure. And if he decides to lead Terrakion, then I just go straight for the Surf as it goes for a close combat or for Stealth Rock's expecting me to switch. So that's pretty convenient having Empoleon here with the Chople Berry. Now if he leads with something like an Excadrill, then I have the 100% safe switch into that named my Salamence, and after the Intimidate, Venusaur is also a perfect switch into Excadrill. So I'm not too concerned about an Excadrill lead. That's the only lead that I think really beats this outside of like Electabuzz if he brings that. This also is my Stealth Rocker, as you can see, as well as my Phaser in case he brings like a Calm Mind Manaphy or a Calm Mind Megalodios that lacks Thunderbolt. And even a Tail Glow Manaphy cannot OHKO me with Hidden Power Electric at +3. So I definitely could roar that away if I think it's going to become an issue. So the special attack investment here, let's see, what's this one do? It basically gives me a near perfect chance to OHKO a Entei if he decides to lead Entei, and in my practice battles I've found that Entei is a pretty common lead against my team. So in leading Empoleon, I'd really like to score the free OHKO against Entei. It's a very, very small chance of not getting the OHKO if it's a standard Entei spread. That assumes 0 HP. Obviously, Trev's not going to do that. He's way too good at preparation to only bring, 252, 252, and no HP. So there's a slightly smaller chance of OHKO and Entei, but I think I still should have a shot regardless of what Entei set he brings, unless it's like Assault Vest. So that is the Empoleon. Again, just a lot of investment in HP and defense because I really don't need the Spadef. All I really need to do is be able to survive a +3 Hidden Power Electric from Manaphy, which will undoubtedly be timid to try to outpace Lucario if he brings it, or it'll be super bulky, in which case it won't matter. It won't be very invested in special attack, so I should be able to survive the hit anyways. So that is the Empoleon. Signal Beam just there to hit basically everything else that Surf doesn't hit neutrally or super effectively. Then we have probably win condition number 1, and that is Lucario on a Focus Sash. This is a physically oriented set, Swords Dance, Bullet Punch, Extreme Speed, and Close Combat. This puts in all the work against him. The only stop he has to this, pure stop to this, is Gourgeist. And if he wants to bring Gourgeist, then I can switch in Sylveon, Calm Mind up on it. I can switch in Mega Venusaur and Sludge Bomb on it and get a Poison on it, and then still set up on it with Sylveon. I can switch in really Mints because I don't care if I'm burned. I have no physical attacks, so I can switch into Burns all day with Mints and drop a Draco on it. That'd be awesome. I can even switch in Empoleon really and get up my rocks on it if I need to, or I can roar it away. I can even go for a powerful Surf if I'm in Torrent range, something like that. And of course the Zelf will have coverage for it, Gourgeist as well. So this set is just really, really strong against him. But the best part about this set is that it sets up on Excadrill and it sets up on the Porygon 2 as well. And even could set up on the Sharpedo if he brings that, as Extreme Speed will out-prioritize its Aqua Jet. So, and Sharpedo being very frail, it's going to be pretty easy to set up on. So I think Lucario has a lot of opportunities to set up a Swords Dance by scaring out a switch, and the Focus Sash allows me to possibly get up another Swords Dance. So at +4, Lucario sweeps his entire team. That's kind of the idea here, especially if he doesn't bring Gourgeist. But he does have some things that can survive +4, I will say. I will need some chip damage on the Megalodios, and I will need some chip damage on a Manaphy. That is if he's like an offensive Manaphy, as I'd be forced to use Extreme Speed, but if he's a slower Manaphy, then at +4 Close Combat will definitely OHKO that. So that's overall the idea with Lucario. There's plenty of opportunities to get this set up, especially considering my last Pokemon, and I just zoomed in on accident. This is a new laptop with a very sensitive mic. or not mic, a very sensitive mouse pad, and it does that sometimes. But here's the last Pokemon, that is a Zelf. This is my favorite set this week, and the fact that this is carrying Thunder Wave is going to make Lucario's job so much easier. It even makes Sylveon's job so much easier, because Sylveon, with Thunder Wave support, becomes a secondary win condition this game. Might even be the best win condition in the game, depending on what he brings. Thunder Wave is primarily there for Terrakion, and there for Megalodios. Granted, I have Energy Ball for coverage to hit the Terrakion, but Energy Ball does not OHKO a Terrakion, especially when my item is Light Clay instead of something like Choice Specs or Life Orb. So Thunder Wave is really, really nice in the matchup, and if I let Megalodios crippled, then my walls outspeed it, and when my walls outspeed it, I'm in a much better position. And then the other thing worth noting with this set is Reflect, as again, his team is very physically oriented on the offensive side, so if I take advantage of that by running a Light Clay Reflect, that puts me in an amazing position, because one, most of my Pokemon are already EV'd heavily in defenses, or in its defense, like not even special defense, mostly in defense, and coupled with a Reflect, I can take hits from essentially anything without any fear. Even a +2 or +4 attack from some of these Pokemon will not be able to take me out because of the Reflect being up. And then the coverage with Energy Ball, of course, allows me to revenge a Manaphy that might get out of hand a little bit. It should do about 50 to 60% if it's a max HP Manaphy, and if it's not invested, it'll do more than that. So that's pretty nice, and Fire Blast is there to hit the Excadrill and the Gourgeist as hard as I can, because those are pretty annoying otherwise. So that is the team. The Speedy Vs, of course, allow me to outspeed a Megalodios at max speed. Nothing else is really necessary. So that's the team. I am pretty excited about this match, to say the least. I definitely been wanting this revenge for the past, 2 months now, 3 months, I think probably 2 months since my finals fiasco against Trev last season. So obviously I'm really wanting revenge, and now is the time to try to get it. But we are on Wi-Fi this game, so I will be right back with the battle. Okay, so at Team Preview, he really didn't bring the team I expected, in that he didn't bring Terrakion or Manaphy, so that's odd to me. I really felt like Terrakion especially would come, just because its wall breaking potential against my team was so good. Maybe he expected me to over prep for it with a bunch of berries or something, I'm not really sure, but even so, just having a Life Orb Terrakion to punch holes into the likes of Sylveon and Mega Venusaur and Empoleon and even Salamence seems like it's really effective against my team. I'm really surprised not to see it, especially like a Scarf Terrakion, because based upon what he brought, if I brought like a Scarf Salamence with Iron Tail, I could plow through his entire team with no issues whatsoever. So that's just something to keep in mind. I guess he has a lot of priorities, so maybe that wouldn't be the strongest option. I don't know. Regardless, his team structure is very interesting. I'm not really sure what to expect based upon what he brought, but the most important thing here to me is that I don't let him develop any win conditions, and I make sure to develop my own win condition, that being Lucario, as certainly the #1 win condition this game, just because with the Focus Sash, and considering what he brought, no Gourgeist, I can put in a lot of work against this team. At +2, I'm able to 2-hit KO almost his entire roster, or OHKO rather, almost his entire roster. The only things being able to avoid that are a fully defensive Aromatisse, as I'm running Bullet Punch over Iron Tail, and a bulkier Entei or bulkier Megalodios. The other, like Excadrill, Fletchender, Sharpedo, all those are blown back at +2. And with that in mind, if I get a little chip damage on Entei, Megalodios, and the Aromatisse, then Lucario becomes a win condition. But on top of that, if I'm able to weaken the Excadrill and weaken the Entei and paralyze the Megalodios, paralyze as much stuff as possible, Sylveon also becomes a win condition in this game, so that's pretty good information to have in the back of my head. But I need to make sure that he is not at any time able to get up a Swords Dance with the Fletchender unless I am in a position where I don't feel I can lose the game, because we all know how good Trev's luck is. We need to make sure that Trev does not get any sort of edge whatsoever, because he will take advantage of any form of RNG that happens to be available for him to take advantage of. So just something to keep in the back of my mind. But also, Mega Venusaur becomes a little bit less useful this game when he doesn't have the likes of Manaphy or Terrakion even, just because it's only really here now to do big damage to the Aromatisse potentially, but more to wall the Sharpedo. I know Sharpedo gets Zen Headbutt, but Zen Headbutt's not going to do that much to Mega Venusaur. It might do 50% with a Life Orb, probably a little bit more, but even so, I can OHKO with Leaf Storm and do a ton with Sludge Bomb. I can Revenge Sharpedo with Extreme Speed, and even Sylveon can take really any hit from that outside of Poison Jab, and even then it won't be able to OHKO me. So just in general, Mega Venusaur is a little bit less important this game in my opinion, especially if I'm able to weaken the Entei to the point where it is taken out by an Extreme Speed from the Lucario. But I won't ramble on too much more. Let's go ahead and jump on into the battle. I know you're looking forward to this one, and I am too. So, moving on to the match, I decided to lead off with my Empoleon in this game, and I really do think it has the best matchup overall against anything he could have led with, and I'm hoping he'll lead with something like Entei, preferably Entei actually, and that's exactly what he does, trying to score the early burn against something on my team, and I'm actually very okay with him going for a Sacred Fire on this turn. I do think he's going to expect me to go for Stealth Rock, considering the fact that he brought both Fletchender and the Entei, and that's exactly what he does, so I'm able to pick up a big chunk of damage here with the Surf, as unfortunately I'm not quite in Torrent range. If I was in Torrent range, it would have been a guaranteed KO here, but I still do a ton of damage to this thing, which is pretty awesome. It does survive, so that tells me it has a little bit of bulk. Considering how much it survived by, it probably has, you know, maybe 100 EVs and HP, something like that. That's just something to keep in mind. He's probably speed creeping something a bit lower than base 100, but I'm just going to go straight into my Salamence, as I need to preserve the Empoleon at the amount of health it is at to make sure I can take a hit from +2 Fletchender later on in the game, as well as take a hit from Mega Latios if I need to, and etc. So unfortunately my Immense does get burned here, but that's also kind of fortunate because it makes sure he can't Toxic me with something, and as long as I'm not Toxic, this thing can definitely wall the likes of Excadrill all day long, and this Entei all day long. Now here he is forced to switch out. I'm going to go for the Toxic, expecting him to go into his Fairy, but he actually goes into the Excadrill, which I thought was a little bit of an interesting play because I easily could have been a Hydro Pump Mince, and I almost brought that honestly over Toxic, and that would have done a lot of damage to this thing here. But it makes sense considering he's actually revealed later to be especially defensive Excadrill, so I guess it makes sense that he brought it in this situation. But I am just going to go for the Draco Meteor, just trying to get some damage on this to gauge his EV spread and just see kind of what he wants to do. I missed the Draco Meteor, not a huge deal at all. He just goes for the Stealth Rock, and I'm just going to immediately defog those away because I cannot afford to have Stealth Rocks on my side of the field until I know for a fact what my win condition is in the game. I need to make sure Lucario is always an option late game, otherwise I'm in a lot of trouble essentially in terms of getting the edge in the matchup. So like I said, I'm going to go for the defog, as he just goes straight for the, I believe, Earthquake, expecting me to go for the Roost or switch into something else. I assume he was expecting me to go for the Roost there, which is an okay play, but considering my investment, considering this likely doesn't have any investment in attack or very, very little, it would have done negligible damage anyways, probably would have put me right back at the amount of health I was at right now. Now here, expecting him to go for another Stealth Rock, I'm just going to take this as my opportunity to roost up, to get myself up to as much health as possible, as there's really no reason not to. I don't really need to switch. I still don't know what his actual investment is at this point, so for all I know, it could be an offensive Excadrill and take a bunch of damage from the Draco Meteor anyways, but here I believe I'm just going to go straight for the defog again, making sure those rocks stay off my side of the field as he hops into his Entei. This is a play I kind of disagree with on his end. I guess he was really worried that I had something like Flamethrower and he wanted to sack this off to Scout. I'm not really sure, although actually I think at this point I already revealed my entire moveset, so I'm not really sure I agree with the Entei switch in. He's basically sacking it when he knows his Aromatisse should be able to switch in without much fear, especially if it has Heal Bell to absorb the Toxic. So I'm not really sure I agree with that play, but he's going to couple the mistake, in my opinion, by actually leaving Entei in to take the Draco Meteor. I guess the better assumption is that he thought he would outspeed me, thinking I was a very bulky Salamence with less speed investment, but I'm definitely going to speed creep the Entei and the Excadrill, and I'm just going to take the Entei right out with the Draco Meteor. So we are up to a nice 6-5 advantage. I get the first kill of the season for my buddy Salamence, and now it could have gotten a little ugly actually. If this was when he tried to switch in his Fletchender and just went straight for the +2, this actually could have been a little bit bad for me, but I would have been forced to go for Toxic essentially, and this was really the only time in the match that I allowed him the opportunity to go into Fletchender and get a free +2. I'm fortunate that he didn't. I would have had to hit my Toxic and then stall him out with something else, which was very doable, but even so, I'm fortunate he goes into his Aromatisse here. Now, expecting him to possibly pull a double, trying to predict my Mega Venusaur, I go into Empoleon as a safer middle ground play. I didn't really think he'd go for an attack that would hit me very hard, maybe a Moonblast or something like that, But he does pull the double into his Fletchender, and even after a Moonblast, I should have been able to take any hit from the Fletchender with the Empoleon, so that's pretty nice. I go for the Surf here, and it actually does a ton to this Sharpedo. It does over half. I'm actually really surprised. I know I'm a modest Empoleon, but that still did a lot more damage than I expected it to do. But I am going to go ahead and switch straight into my Mega Venusaur, as if anything, it'll help me wear down the Sharpedo. I really don't want Mega Venusaur around, honestly, outside of differential purposes. Like after the Sharpedo was gone. So this next sequence of plays is more or less trying to get it to the point where my Mega Venusaur and the Sharpedo go down at the same time. That's kind of my goal here. I'm fully expecting him to have Zen Headbutt, and I know it'll do a lot of damage, but I do think if I get up a Leech Seed here instead of going for Sludge Bomb, I could have gone for Sludge Bomb and taken him out, no problem, but that gives him an opportunity to go into Fletchender and get a free +2, and that's not something I want at all. So I'm going for the Leech Seed here, expecting to barely survive the Zen Headbutt, which I do, and then after the Life Orb damage and the Leech Seed damage, I'm hoping that Sharpedo goes down with me, and it'll be a double down situation, or I guess I'm also kind of okay with Mega Venusaur going down without the Sharpedo going down. Regardless, I did kind of count my Leech Seed turns, and this was the outcome I was hoping for. I'm hoping he takes me out here with something. If he went for something like a Surf on this turn and made me survive so we could set up with Fletchender, that would be an amazing play. And I was kind of hoping he wasn't that good, but I know Trev is pretty good. Obviously, he got to the championship for a reason the past 2 seasons. But fortunately for me, he just goes for the Dark Pulse and takes out Mega Venusaur. So now Fletchender does not have that opportunity to set up for free, and Sharpedo is easily in range of an Extreme Speed from Lucario. So that is what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go straight into Lucario, click E-Speed, and he will sack his Sharpedo here. So down goes that monster without putting in too much work. Honestly, it kind of fell right into my hands on what I wanted it to do at team preview. So we're off to a pretty good start here, to say the least. I feel like I have command of the battle. I haven't really solidified a win con yet, but as long as Lucario's Focus Sash is intact, I should be in good shape to win the game, in my opinion. So now, I don't know what kind of Mega Latios this is going to be, but my designated switch-in is my Sylveon. I'm going to go ahead and switch right into it, unless he's an adamant, fully offensive Mega Latios, then I could take any 2 hits from this without fainting. So that's what I'm going to do. He just goes straight for the Calm Mind, which actually was a little bit scary, but even so, I do think I'm free to just go ahead and go straight for the Hyper Voice here. With my investment, I'm actually not able to quite 2-hit KO a max HP Mega Latios, but if he's offensive, then I still can 2-hit KO this thing with Hyper Voice. So I'm assuming he switched out here just in case I was like a choice spec Sylveon, which definitely wasn't a good option against his team, to say the least, and I'm just fortunate he switched out there. It made things a little bit easier, in my opinion, as he goes straight into his Excadrill and takes no damage from the Hyper Voice. I think that actually tickled him, and that just reveals that this is definitely a specially defensive Excadrill, or at least a bulky Excadrill with a lot of HP investment and leftovers. So now I'm just going to go straight into my Azelf, as this is where I think I have the best opportunity to really start to dig in and gain the advantage that I need to gain, get the chip damage I need to get, such that I can win the game with my Lucario in the back. So now I'm just going to go straight for the Reflect, as with the Reflect up, Excadrill does nothing to my team. With it being specially defensive, after this Reflect, look how little this Earthquake does to me. He'll go for it here, and I think it does like, what, 25 to 30% to an Azelf? Looks like about 35, maybe 35% to my Azelf, and Azelf is very frail, you know this, and that just did nothing. So Reflect is an awesome move for this matchup for sure, but I'm just going to go straight for the Fire Blast. Yes, I know, I rep Fire Blast, I'm a rebel, right? But fortunately for me, it actually hits, and that's pretty nice because it's an easy 2-hit KO on this thing, and he decides to go for the Toxic here. I don't really understand that play either. I think he should have just gone for another Earthquake to try to do more damage to me. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm not really sure on that play. Maybe... No, I have no idea, because I could have easily just gone into Venusaur as well, so I'm not really... Or Venusaur's dead. I don't know. I have no idea. Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and eat up that Toxic and go straight for the Fire Blast, and that will take out the Excadrill as well, so that's pretty awesome too. With this in mind, though, I believe he might just be lured into going into Mega Latios, and that's what I'm really hoping here, as his other Pokemon really don't seem like amazing switch-ins to this, especially with the Reflect up. He doesn't know if I have Thunderbolt on this thing. I haven't revealed Energy Ball, so he can't go straight into Fletchender and expect to be okay. So he goes into his Mega Latios, and I get the T-Wave off, and now we're looking real nice in the matchup, in my opinion, as T-Wave is the best status in the game, or, you know, Paralysis off. T-Wave is the best status in the game, and he is going to go straight for the Calm Mind, probably expecting me to not not be able to touch him outside of something like Dazzling Gleam or U-Turn, but I have T-Wave, and now Sylveon becomes that much better of a stop to this thing, especially considering I have Calm Mind in my arsenal and can set up right alongside it. The only way he'll be able to beat my Sylveon 1v1 with the paralysis on it is if he has Psyshock and even so, and he's like really bulky, even specially bulky. I'm not really sure. I don't think he can beat Sylveon at all, given his moveset and his investments. So I go straight into Sylveon. He gets fully paralyzed. Not sure what he went for there. Possibly a Roost. Or no, he's at full health. I'm not really sure what he went for there. Probably another Calm Mind, I guess. But this is just a free Hyper Voice on my end, and as you can see, it'll still do over half. Well over half actually, looks like about 55 to 60% to the Mega Latios from the Sylveon, and that's plenty of damage to where I'm in a pretty good spot here. Now, after seeing his attacking option is stored power and knowing that his best play is to try to roost up here or go for another Calm Mind, I'm going to go for Calm Mind myself. Now, this isn't to ensure a KO on Mega Latios, this is to make sure he can't beat me with Fletchender, because without the Calm Mind, I cannot 2-hit KO Fletchender with Hyper Voice. With the Calm Mind, I can 2-hit KO a standard Fletchender, unless he's like max HP, max BDEF, bulk up, or something, or even SD. This ensures that I can 2-hit KO a standard offensive Fletchender, and I'm expecting SD because if he's a bulk up set, he might not be able to beat Mega Venus or 1v1 if I ran something like Hidden Power Rock. Or even so, like even Sludge Bomb. But regardless, I'm just going to go straight for the Hyper Voice. He knows he's in trouble now. He goes straight into his Aromatisse, and that doesn't take this at all. I think even without the +1, I would have been able to 2-hit KO this with Hyper Voice, so that's pretty nice. No idea what kind of set this was, but we're not going to find out either, as I'm just going to knock that out with the Hyper Voice. I didn't see Leftover, so it actually might be a Berry as a Lucario check. Not exactly sure, but Sylveon's looking pretty good. His last chance to win this game is by going into his Fletchender now and trying to set up a Swords Dance and win that way, but I'm not going to have that. He has to be able to crit my Sylveon at +2. He has to get up a Swords Dance, crit my Sylveon with an Acrobatics, crit my Empoleon with an Acrobatics, and crit my Salamence with an Acrobatics to be able to win this game. Those are odds I think I will take, as I can't really do much better than those odds in winning a game against the Hacksmaster himself. So hopefully we're able to pull this one off and not get bumped on the chin, or bopped on the chin, not just bumped this time around like we did in the championship. But he decides to start going for Roosts. I don't really understand this play outside of maybe he was trying to get me to choke by going for a Calm Mind or a Wish or something, but I am not going to let him get back up above, you know, half health, as long as he's below half health, he's already in extreme speed range from Lucario, so that's a pretty good deal as well. Lucario already wins at this point as long as I get off a defog with Salamence, but even so, I don't want him to take out my Sylveon either, or get any sort of edge with the Acrobatics spam. So he's just going to keep spamming Roost for the next few turns, and eventually, the Fletchender will go down. I believe on this turn he decides to go ahead and go for the Acrobatics just to see if he could take me out. And as you can see here, I'm not going to spoil quite yet, but I barely survive at 30 HP. So his Roost spam play didn't cost him anything. He still wouldn't have been able to take out my Sylveon, as he would have had to do 10 more HP of damage in order for his Roost to be considered a choke of some kind. So he wouldn't have been able to take me out anyway despite the Roost. But I am able to survive the +2 Acrobatics, and Sylveon is going to clean up this game with a Hyper Voice. So the Toronto Raptors have avenged our championship loss from last season against Trev, the two-time NPL champion and defending NPL champion, by picking up a clean 5-0 victory this week. And let me tell you, I am very happy that this was the outcome. I believe my prep was pretty solid this week. I don't think I really could have done anything much better in terms of my prep. And yeah, I guess that's about all there is to it. Definitely go check out my opponent's channel, Trev. It will be in the description below. He's a good guy. He's got a pretty new channel, but his content is constantly improving. I think he recently got a new computer that's looking pretty nice on his new videos. So definitely go check him out, as well as check out the NPL YouTube channel. That'll also be a link in the description below. The NPL YouTube channel is getting better and better every single day. We're getting all kinds of new graphics from my buddy Grant's Remington Graphics. Definitely check out his channel. His link will also be in the description below. Definitely a very cool guy and solid at making both intros. He makes the NPL intro as well as the graphics that we use on our channel, and the nice graphic you see around this video right now. But yeah, that's about all there is to say about this match. good game, Trev. Definitely exciting to be able to pull off a Week 1 victory. Next week, we have a battle against Cypher and the Detroit Leopards. Cypher is one of the newer coaches in the MPL this season. He's had a good amount of success in the MPL, so the Major Pokemon League, in the past. So he's definitely a formidable opponent, but I think I can handle him as well. I'll just have to bring my A game as per the usual, and we will see if we can get the Toronto Raptors off to a 2-0 record. So that's all there is to it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week. Peace.